Did you take an initial vote to see where everybody was?
We did.
So where was everybody? How was that first vote?
We had 3 not guilties, 1 second-degree murder, and 2 manslaughters.
So half the jury felt he was not guilty, 2 manslaughters and 1 second degree.
Exactly.
Can you say where, do you want to say where you were on that?
I was not guilty.
So going into it, once the evidence, all the evidence had been presented, you felt he was not guilty?
I did. I think if the medical examiner could have done a better job at preserving Trayvon's evidence on him.
The state medical
examiner. I mean, the state. They should have bagged his hands. They should have dried his clothes. They should have done a lot of things they didn't do.
Do you feel you know truly what happened?
I have a rendition of what I believe happened, and I think it's probably as close as anybody could come to what happened. But nobody's not going to know what exactly happened except for George.
So you took that first vote. You saw basically jury split. Half the jurors, including yourself, thought not guilty. 2 people thought manslaughter. 1 person thought second-degree murder had been proven. How do you then go about deciding things?
We started looking at the evidence. We listened to all the tapes 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
The 911 recordings.
The 911 recordings, and then there's the reenactment tape. There were some tapes from previous 911 calls that George had made. The
reenactment tape, that's the tape of George Zimmerman walking police through what he says happened.
Exactly. We looked through pretty much everything. That's why it took us so long. We're looking through the evidence, and then at the end we got done, and then we just started looking at the law, what exactly we could find and how we should vote for this case. And the law became very confusing.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It became very confusing. We had stuff thrown at us. We had the second-degree murder charge, the manslaughter charge, then we had self-defense, stand your ground, and I think there was one other one. But the manslaughter case, we actually had gotten it down to manslaughter, because the second degree, it wasn't at second degree anymore.
So the person who felt it was second degree going into it, you had convinced them, okay, it's manslaughter.
Going through the law. And then we had sent a question to the judge, and it was not a question that they could answer yes or no. So they sent it back saying that if we could narrow it down to a question, asking us if what exactly, not what about the law and how to handle it, but if they could just have I guess, I don't know.
You sent a question out to the judge about manslaughter.
Yes.
And about
and what could be applied to the manslaughter. We were looking at the self-defense. One of the girls said asked if you can put all the leading things into that one moment where he feels it's a matter of life or death to shoot this boy, or if it was just at the heat of passion at that moment.
So that juror wanted to know whether the things that had brought George Zimmerman to that place, not just in the minute or two before the shot actually went off, but earlier that day, even prior crime?
Not prior crimes, just the situation leading to it. All the steps, as the ball got rolling, if all that...
From him spotting Trayvon Martin to getting out of his vehicle to following, whether all of that could play a role in...
determining the self-defense or not.
Did you feel like you understood the instructions from the judge? Because they were very complex. I mean, reading them, they were tough to follow.
Right. And that was our problem. I mean, it was just so confusing what went with what and what we could apply to what. Because, I mean, there was a couple of them in there that wanted to find him guilty of something. And after hours and hours and hours of deliberating over the law and reading it over and over and over again, we decided there's just no other place to go.
Because of the two options you had, second-degree murder or manslaughter, you felt neither applied.
Right. Well, because of the heat of the moment and the stand your ground. I mean, he had a right to defend himself. If he felt threatened that his life was going to be taken away from him or he was going to have bodily harm, he had a right.
So even though it was he who had gotten out of the car, followed Trayvon Martin, that didn't matter in the deliberations. What mattered was that those final seconds, minutes, when there was an altercation, and whether or not, in your mind, what the most important thing was, whether or not George Zimmerman felt his life was in danger.
Well, that's how we read the law. That's how we got to the point of everybody being not guilty.
So that was the belief of the jury, that you had to zero in on those final minutes/seconds about the threat that George Zimmerman believed he faced.
That's exactly what happened.
So whether it was George Zimmerman getting out of the vehicle, whether he was right to get out of the vehicle, whether he was a wannabe cop, whether he was overeager, none of that in the final analysis mattered. What mattered was those seconds before the shot went off. Did George Zimmerman fear for his life?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
And do you have any doubt that George Zimmerman feared for his life?
I had no doubt George feared for his life in the situation he was in at the time.